So I just talk over here and we're good to go? Alrighty. I was curious what would happen there. Welcome everybody to the Brisbane Laravel Meetup for November. Very exciting. We've just come back from Laracon. Who here went to Laracon? Quite a few people. Awesome, awesome. Did you all get your Laracon shirts? I see you've got an old school Laracon shirt. Very, very cool. So today, some like housekeeping things. So toilets are back to where the elevators are apparently, and I think 2 lefts or something from there. That's what I was told. Out the door and to the left. Fantastic. Now, AWS has very graciously let us have this space, so let's make sure we keep it nice and clean, leave it how we found it or better than we found it. What else have we got to say? Sorry, I put a note in my phone here. So we're going to have our first talk, which will be Joel Mail on being your own boss as a developer, which I'm very excited to hear about, even though I have my dream job. We're then going to have a break for pizza, and pizza is provided by iSeek Plant. We've got the beers, as you've all found, provided by AWS. And after the break, we'll then have Kevin Bowie talking about eloquent secret features. So I think we are ready to jump into our first talk. Alrighty, so let's welcome Joel Mail to talk about being your own boss as a developer.
Alright, so is any one of these plugged in? Oh, here it has happened.
Cool. Ready to go.
It might change this to cool. No, I'm printing things now.
Is that like a live stream of the kitchen?
No, that's a live stream. That's here.
Oh, that's here. There you go.
Okay, cool. Testing. Okay, cool. Hi everyone, so my name is Joel, nice to meet you all. This is my first time giving a public talk, but I have seen every kind of Laracon and everything since they started. So yeah, I'm going to be talking today about being your own boss as a developer, and I'll kind of dive into that and why I feel like I have the authority to talk on such a subject. I know it is a big claim, as if I know what I'm talking about. So yeah, just a little bit of kind of housekeeping on who I am. So I am the managing director of Pixel, which is a Laravel-focused digital agency here in Brisbane. So yeah, only a couple of weeks ago, through my chats with Taylor, we got confirmed to be the only official Oceania partner of Laravel in Australia and New Zealand. So that was definitely very exciting to get through that news. So now we're actually an official partner with Laravel. And then, yeah, most recently been breaking into some side projects. So haven't really done anything with SaaS related stuff because I've been focusing on growing the business. But most recently just launched Career Lane, which is a job board focused on some AI technology. And that is kind of being branched off into some more exciting projects, which I can't talk about at the moment due to NDA agreements. But there is some very exciting stuff coming out of there. And then just some background on my personal life. So I'm a husband and I'm a father to 2 girls. Which makes me feel a little bit old, but they are definitely keeping me on my toes. I blog sometimes at joelmail.com. Honestly, not really. It is more of just something I have to say. I do try and get at that content, but life is just very busy with 2 kids and running your own company. And I post sometimes at x.com, so I wasn't actually going to use x.com. I was going to use Twitter. But anyway, I do agree with everything Elon's doing. So, all right, so I'll just dive a quick look into my journey. I think Elon is doing great things with Twitter, personally. So yeah, a quick look at my journey. I started off in a pretty interesting space working at a rural internet service provider company. That was probably not the best branch into becoming a developer, as I kind of didn't really work towards the mainstream of what the business was doing. They were delivering high-speed internets to gas and mining camps here in Australia. And I was just focusing on a franchising application that was actually written in Perl being converted over to PHP. So that was all vanilla PHP. That was, I think, Laravel was around back then. That was in 2014, 2015. but it was just the early days. Then went into a Laravel SaaS application, which was built in Laravel. It was athlete management software, so that was actually sports companies being able to manage their athletes and kind of tracking things like medical appointments when they're out due to injury and stuff like that. Then worked into my first agency, which actually brought me into knowing Laravel and learning Laravel, working with debt collection portals, and I even put in there a prawn management software, which sounds a bit strange, but due to the agriculture industry here in Australia, there is strict guidelines and legal conformances around shrimps and importing them and working with them. So yeah, did that with a Laravel application, just working with APIs. Then jumped into Culture Kings. So I'm sure a lot of you would know Culture Kings. They are a streetwear brand here in Australia. They are global now, but yeah, I worked with a Laravel API hooking into a .NET application there for their entire warehousing software. So I did some really cool stuff there around tote picking and optimizing that within Laravel. And then just more agencies throughout there. And then in 2021 is where I started my journey being my own boss. So I started Pixel, the agency that I run and manage at the moment. So I think a lot of the reasons why I decided to start and branch off into this is because I wanted to work more with Laravel and kind of work with and define my own hours in the industry. And then I also just wanted to be able to choose the work that I did. There's a lot of mundane work that you can do as a developer, some work that isn't fun and it's really just kind of time consuming and boring. And then I also just wanted to be able to choose the companies I worked with, so work with companies where I truly believed in the motto of the company. Which, so when you're doing any kind of working in an agency, you don't get to choose or pick or make those decisions. You are just kind of working with the technologies and the companies that you're kind of forced to work with. Interesting. I don't know if I can see my notes. So yeah, I'm just going to kind of jump into some of the learnings I've had throughout my journey before I jump into kind of showing how you could do this and how I would do it. If I was to start again, how I would jump into this. So, definitely some of the hard points, finding those clients that are worth working for. I think with anyone, I'm in a few kind of freelancing communities, and one of the biggest questions that we always get asked is how to find clients. And then, one of the other hard things is doing good work at a profitable speed. So when you are working with Laravel and you're working with any custom solution software, you end up having to spin up everything all the time, from doing kind of, entire projects, Docker containers, GitHubs, and all of that stuff. So, clients don't always pay you to learn on the job. So it's about, that is some of the hard stuff with working with that. And then some of the other stuff is, solving complex problems in tight deadlines. So some of the recent stuff that Pixel has had to deal with is legal conformance when collecting patient data. We're currently working with a company that does prescriptions here in Australia. So that's definitely been challenging because out of the box, Laravel doesn't have, great kind of streamlined solutions for that level of conformance you need for the legal industries. And then even around, matching free text fields to products using similarity algorithms in PHP. So definitely a lot of things that, when you are doing all the work yourself, you have to consider that there are some hard parts of the job. But then definitely, some of the good stuff, you get to work with awesome clients. So you get to choose all the clients that you work with. You get to work with the ones that you believe in and the ones that kind of treat you well. You get to do good work and you get to solve complex problems, and that's always a win. When you're able to solve a really complex situation or a business logic problem, the amount of kind of joy and satisfaction you get out of seeing the clients, that you've actually just solved something that they could never have solved themselves is always a good win. And then I guess the big one and kind of more towards what Pixel does is supporting businesses who need custom solutions. Where off-the-shelf tools like Shopify, Wix, and kind of Squarespace, they don't solve the current needs that they have. That could be for a variety of reasons, but some of the clients we work with are, just legislative reasons around kind of, medicinal cannabis and working with patient data. And then they might, even have something simple like having subscription software. Shopify is still kind of new to that subscription software. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of kind of goods and bads in kind of working for yourself, but I would say definitely it's mostly good. So yeah, so now I'm going to dive into how I would recommend someone getting started into freelancing and kind of becoming their own boss. So I'll kind of dive through the 5 steps that I would do, except step 5 is kind of just repeating steps 3 and 4. So for the start, I would say you definitely need to kind of look at, you need to establish a baseline on what you want to do and who you want to work with. So that is asking yourself the questions on who do you serve and who do you work with? What problems do you solve and what makes you the expert and the one that can solve the problem? So one of the initial things that I did when I got started was I read this book, $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozi, which was actually a really good book to read, and I definitely recommend reading that for anyone that is interested in learning more about that. The basic premise of the book is creating yourself as a subject matter expert and making it so that you could offer someone $100 million to do the work and they have no reason to say no. Well, apart from obviously the budgetary and the financial restrictions, but to create that kind of experience where someone expects that they would be able to pay you $100 million to do the work because you are the person fit for the job. So it's all about kind of establishing that authority in the relationship. They need to know that you are that expert and there is no one else that is better than you in that situation. So that is why kind of whenever you look at kind of anyone that is getting started with freelancing, one of the big questions that we always get asked and we always see in the communities is, well, how do you define what work you want to do and who you want to work with? Sometimes people are of the opinion that they could just kind of serve everyone and do every kind of website, every industry and kind of every technology stack. And that's it's definitely it is a valid kind of counter argument to the point, but it also kind of doesn't really let you kind of establish yourself as the subject matter expert in whatever industry that you are actually trying to solve. So it would be something like if you are serving plumbers and then you are serving electricians, so those industries don't really overlap in what you're trying to solve. They have different customer bases, they have different reasons for services and the customers needing those services. So then that always obviously kind of expands onto that into, well, how would you know how to do the SEO for that company and get their name out there? So that's why it's always important that I would say just niching down and working out which companies you want to work with and who you can service best. So I would definitely recommend doing that from the start. So then step 2, if you wanted to get out and do freelancing and be your own boss, you definitely need to look at, well, what tech stacks you would use to solve those issues. So, obviously we're at a Laravel Meetup, so you may think that Laravel is the solution, but it's not always. There are a lot of people that do successful agencies doing WordPress. WordPress can solve some pretty complicated issues and it has its drawbacks, just such as Laravel. Sometimes Laravel is not actually the quickest solution to spinning up something. So definitely it's important to work out what tech stacks you're able to work with and that you can solve the problems with for that target audience and the target customer base. And then it's definitely worth asking, can you solve the problems efficiently using this tech? Efficiently is that you don't want to be spending a ridiculously large amount of time doing the same thing you do week in and week out, because that is just not commercially or economically viable for anyone. The idea is that you would always kind of be more efficient and grow as you develop and you work in that industry and working with those customers to be able to get the work done quicker. And I'll talk about it in a later state or a later point, but doing the work quicker doesn't mean you charge less, because I'm definitely very passionate about that. Just because you can do something faster doesn't mean you need to suffer the financial consequences of being better at your job. And then definitely worth asking, do you have any knowledge gaps with the technology? So, a prime example with this, just very relatable, Laravel by default has full page refreshes and just out of the box doesn't actually support single page applications. So if you did have a client come in and say, well, I want a single page app written in React, that has no hard refreshes, data is stated, it's all stored in state, never refreshes. Can you actually solve that if that customer was to come in and ask for that kind of constraint on their project? That's obviously not an issue now in Laravel with Inertia and Livewire. So, Pixel uses the tool stack for every project we do. So, Alpine, JS, Tailwind, Livewire, and Laravel. So all of those kind of questions are actually never questions we get asked. But it's always definitely worth considering is, do you have any knowledge gaps in that technology? Because it's going to be something that you want to kind of iron out before you take yourself to market. So then once you've solved, what clients you're going to work with and exactly what tech stacks you're going to use, the next step is finding the clients. And this seems to be the hardest part for everyone that wants to break into this space of doing freelancing and defining your own hours. I think that there is this kind of sense where it's overhyped a lot that clients are actually hard to find. I think that it's probably not as true as people would say. A lot of what you need to do is market yourself and just getting your name out there. So that would be if you're freelancing, you need to really get your name out there on Twitter, LinkedIn, and a personal website, which showcases the work you've done for yourself or your other clients, showcases what you can do and what you can achieve. That kind of ties into that third point of showcasing your work. So yeah, if you just market yourself, that is how you, not only that helps you to get your name out there, but it also helps to establish yourself as a subject matter expert. Because someone will go to your Twitter profile or your LinkedIn profile and see that you're always tweeting or posting about this content. That just helps to build that relationship authority. Someone can't really question you and say, well, you don't know anything about this topic if you actually just post about that topic all the time on Twitter or LinkedIn. Then the next thing I would say is that's where you start networking. So coming to events like this, going to just events where you would find clients. So I've also already suggested this previously, but coming to programming events is always a good way to do networking. One question I always get asked is, yeah, but they're all developers. They don't need websites. They're not plumbers or they're not electricians. I mean, I don't work with plumbers or electricians. I'm just going to tell you that. We do funner stuff than that, but just it's a common example that everyone can relate to. But yeah, you don't know actually who in this room is actually doing any freelancing at all. You might have person A that does no freelancing, but knows someone that needs someone to do the work. If you go out and network, you get your name out there, you build those relationships, that helps you to, establish that you can do the work, and then they might then think of you next time they're talking to that person that needs that service. So just getting your name out there and networking is always really good. I'd say another thing that you could do is look at Upwork. I would not say go to Fiverr or anything. Upwork has its positives and its negatives. I think that with the way Upwork and Fiverr have treated people offering services, it ends up being a fight to the bottom dollar. Whoever can do the service cheaper. So sometimes it is a bit of a toxic community to be in. You might always try and undercut someone else that's offering something for the same service at a cheaper price. But you've really just got to stick to your guns and, always quote out what you think you're worth on your hourly rate and just make sure that profile shows what you can do. Again, it's always got to link back to your website, your Twitter, your LinkedIn to kind of, build that relationship and that your authority in that space. Then, I think the most powerful way of finding clients is always referrals. If you spend the time doing really good work for your first client, you will naturally always get more work out of that first client. It might be that they just talk to another business that needs the same services as them. They might go to a networking event and get told, hey, do you know anyone that can do a website for me or can do this? Because you've done good work, you are on the forefront of their mind. They will always talk about you. That was exactly how Pixel got started. Pixel had one client to start off with. It was just work that I had done while I was working at my previous job. Built a really good relationship with that client, and then they referred us to 4 other clients, which actually let this dream come true. So we got 4 clients straight out of the bat. So definitely, if you want to get into the space of finding clients, you just need to be marketing yourself and networking and doing good work. I think you can never understate that doing good work does generate more work. And that's something that when you get busy, it's one of the things that always falls is the quality of work that you do. If you're busy and you've got to meet 3 deadlines for 3 different clients, you will naturally always drop the ball on one of them. And that is where you've got to be super careful to not do that, because the minute you don't do quality work is the minute that someone won't refer you or won't want to use your services again. So step 4 is doing the work. So this is one that just gets easier over time. I think that Pixel 2 years ago and what I was doing 2 years ago, things were a lot more cumbersome, and especially with where packages coming out where you can reuse things very easily, like Livewire, Inertia, all of the first party packages from Laravel. I think things are just getting so easy for developers now. It is actually so crazy how quick you can spin up a SaaS application. You don't need to do anything with Laravel Breeze and all of the things that Laravel provides. But so with when you're doing anything more custom like that, doing checkout systems, doing reporting and exporting of data, that is where when you have that all for one client, you can always bake it into your agreements that you can reuse that code. You obviously always have to have it stated in the agreement that you will not publish any data and you will not reuse any code that has been specifically written for that client without prior agreements. But building that local repository of code is absolutely incredible. The amount of things that we can do, that I can do personally, just spinning up new websites just by cloning and copy pasting code from other projects that I've done is just crazy. Especially when you get that really great Alpine JS function and you reuse that, there's nothing better, honestly. Using open source packages is also really good, but the only caveat that I'd add to that is make sure they're well tested. You don't want to use anything that's not well tested or anything that's supported, because the minute you have a client come to you at 12 a.m. on a Sunday night saying this doesn't work, Joel, or this doesn't work, X, and there's nothing you can do to solve that because it's a third-party package that's causing that. That will honestly kill your soul. So just make sure any packages you use are very well tested and supported. Otherwise, you will have to go down the route in doing your own package. And there's no shame if there is an abandoned package and you need to use that. You can always fork that if you credit the original author. If it's abandoned and it's no longer being updated, then you either look for someone else that's done the same thing, or you do it yourself and you just credit the original author. And then definitely if you're doing the work yourself, it goes beyond just knowing how to write Laravel. You need to learn how to do Git, do deployments, error tracking. You need to know how to do DNS, so managing domains and all of that stuff. So there's definitely a lot to learn when you want to go onto your own, because you don't have anyone else. You know, if you're working at a company where they have a DevOps guy or a server management team and they manage all the servers, you know, luckily there are tools. Again, there's Laravel Forge, which manages all the configurations for you. You know, Laravel again just offers so many solutions to solving that problem. But yeah, you will ultimately need to know how to dive into a server to debug an issue. So always be prepared to do that. And then I'd say the step 5 is just doing step 3 and 4. So that's networking, that is building your relationship, showcasing your work, and then doing the actual work. You know, I think that once you just get into this rhythm of always baking into your agreements that you can review the platform and write a case study on the platform, that helps to build your authority even more. And then it's just important to keep in mind that it's a marathon and it's not a race. So you just keep doing the work, keep finding ways to work smarter, not harder. Keep networking and keep teaching and showcasing your work. And then, yeah, it definitely gets easier. I think that, you know, where I am now, being my own boss, I would say the first 6 months was very stressful. Having a 3-month-old at the time was my first daughter, and trying to make money and bring in, you know, put dinner on the table, it was very stressful. But it definitely gets easier when you build up that portfolio and you build up those case studies. And then, yeah, I would say definitely here in Australia, stay on top of your accounting and your taxes, because they will bite you. Don't get me started on taxes. You just don't know taxes until you run your own business here in Australia. So yeah, just some tips and tricks here. So the coding part's the easy part. So definitely make sure that you're prepared on that. Writing Laravel is extremely easy when you know what you're doing. That is not the hard part compared to getting your name out there, doing talks, and, you know, scheduling time to sit on Twitter and you know, kind of teach people things. When you come from a developer background, writing code is always the easiest part. Definitely keep receipts and track your expenses and invoices. This is more so important for you to make sure that you're still able to put food on the table. Because I would say never go into a freelancing or being your own boss if you're not confident that you can still put dinner on your table. I just don't think, you know, as nice as being your own boss and working in this space is, I don't think it's ever worth not being able to kind of, you know, have that life that you want to have. You've always got to play that happy medium. Then I'd say, yep, so stay on top of your accounting and your taxes. Again, taxes, don't get me started. Track time and tasks. So that's a really good one on, you know, so Pixel uses ClickUp and EverHour. It's an endless search for a solution that does this really well. The amount of times that I've thought of spinning up my own SaaS to do tasks and time management, and then I realized that is a really horrible space to be in because of the amount of data that you would have to track. Reporting is king, so make sure that you're staying on top of those reports to, you know, make sure your bottom line is still good. You are still able to pay all your employees, pay yourself, you know, and then still pay those taxes and kind of continue growing, you know, the freelancing stuff. That's where if you have any onflow or overflow of money, you can reinvest that into, you know, your networking. You can get, you know, LinkedIn Premium, Twitter Premium, you know, and start kind of helping yourself with that. Yeah, and then just quickly to wrap up, one of the other things I would say is just because you get better doesn't mean you get paid less. You know, I think there always needs to be a happy medium. I mean, you can't, obviously as a junior developer, if something takes you 10 hours, you should be charging for those 10 hours because that is raw time that you took. But, you know, I don't think that if you can do it in an hour, you should then be charging an hour because that is, you've made a net loss for just being better at what you do. And I don't think that is the way the world should work because I don't think anyone who can make or manufacture anything actually charges less when they optimize their process. So I think development shouldn't be any different. I mean, it's obviously that argument. I don't know if you should be charging 10 hours if you can do it in one. That's a bit, hey, how you going? I mean, but I think you could play that happy medium of charging, you know, somewhere in the middle. You know, it's always just important to make sure that you're still, you know, you're not ripping yourself off by being able to reuse code and, you know, those 20 hours you spent on that Saturday afternoon, you know, you need to be able to charge for those. But yeah, that's it. That's that's how I'd say you can get started in being your own boss. It's very fun.
Thank you very much, Joel.
Thank
I
you.
like that you found a way to go on Twitter and call it work. So, well
No,
done on
Twitter
that
is
one.
work, absolutely.
And I also like the idea about including things in your contract so you can, like, you know, reuse the code. And I think that's probably what Sparty has in all of their contracts, right?
Oh, absolutely. The amount of code that Sparty reuses, they have 600 packages. Do you think that they've got developers writing 600 packages every day? I don't know how they would do any billable work. They would definitely be reusing code and then definitely extracting that from their contracts with clients to bring that into the open source community. You know, the more code that you can reuse, it just makes your life so much easier.
And because they're putting the code out there, they're getting their name out there, and
Exactly.
then the cycle continues. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Do we have time for questions, and would you like questions?
Oh, no. Oh, yeah, sorry. I should have questions.
Yes,
are
we
good.
have time for questions. Would you like any questions?
Hello, yes.
On the
I'll let
taking
you-
the code that you've written for a client and
I'll get back to
you know,
this.
using it for whatever other purpose you have you ever had any challenges with that? People saying, no, I don't want you to. You know,
Look, honestly, clients don't actually...
I want to just slightly summarise the question in case the mic.
Sorry, yeah. He just asked if I've ever had any challenges reusing code that I've used for clients. Honestly, I would say it depends on the code you're reusing, because I don't want to go on record for saying this, but clients don't always know you're reusing their code. You know, yeah, it's in the agreement, so it always covers you. But if it's not something that you're actually using, say like a checkout process or a specific process you've developed on the front end, you know, usually you could always, above board is to say, look, I just want to reuse this code. You know, you anonymize it and you don't put their name or their brand on it. But no, yeah, I haven't ever had any issues with that. Yes, hello.
So, as a freelancer, do you work more hours or fewer hours? And compared to like a 9 to 5 person, do you have like a different time period to work?
Yeah, so the question was, do I work more hours as a freelancer and do my time or my hours differ from the 9 to 5? I'd say initially when I got started, I definitely worked more hours. But so now where I'm at is, you know, I have a daughter that has, you know, needs, and I have to take 2 hours off on a Monday morning. So it's always really good. I don't ever have to make up that time because I can just take that time off, you know, because we make that up in the billable work throughout the month. I definitely don't work anything more than a 9 to 5 job. And honestly, sometimes I only work 9 till 2. You know, when you optimize your processes and you can do things faster and more efficiently, you can always then, you know, get back that time when you need to. It is, you know, I won't deny it's a hard slog to start off with, but it definitely pays off when you get more efficient in what you're doing. Yes.
You mentioned, you know, when starting out and taking on more clients may mean that you reduce the quality that you're providing. So I suppose, like, what would you say to someone who is starting out, who finds himself taking on some more clients and, like, you know, where you may have multiple clients, you know, on the go at the same time, but then, you know, equally important priorities come through from those clients?
Yeah, okay, so the question was, how would you handle it if you had multiple clients at once and were working on all of those and had equally important priorities come through on those clients? Yeah, no, that's definitely a hard thing that you have to just kind of manage. You have to always, when you have a client come in and say they've got a problem, you have to rank that problem through the discussions with the client and say, well, how urgent is this? You know, for tasks that are very urgent, you know, if the website's down or if something's not functioning, you always need to drop whatever work you're doing to fix that, because you do want to make sure that your clients are always online. But, you know, I think the most important thing is just scheduling the time. It's always having those honest conversations to say, look, I've only got these amount of hours available this month. Does that work for you? You know, obviously, we as developers at a 9 to 5 pace, you know, on a 5-day week, you only get, what's that, like 38 hours? You know, you only get 38 hours a week. So ultimately, you can always sneak in more hours if you've got the time after hours, but it's just all about scheduling and having those honest conversations. I think you'd definitely be surprised that if a client has a deadline, you can always push that deadline out if you communicate. I would say communication is always the most important thing. Unless there's something like a sale period in which, yeah, if you're, you know, like Black Friday, we had to deploy some code for Black Friday and it got pretty crazy there. But then you can always say back to the client, well, you should have communicated this earlier because I communicate to you, so you should communicate to me. But yeah, no. Okay, cool. Oh, I'll take one more question.
You've had yours.
Yeah, you've had your turn.
When it comes to new clients or new projects and they either need or want upfront estimates or a fixed price or quote on your projects, do you have any tips for how you've come to a point where you're getting accurate with that stuff? Because it always sucks when you quote on something fixed and then you quickly realize, oh shit.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one of the challenges because when you're doing project-based work, you can never get away with charging hourly. And I would also say you never charge hourly on project-based work because that does have a real opportunity to really annoy a client. It just comes down to that experience. You know, when you've done the work, you know, on your side projects and you know roughly how long that takes, you'll definitely, you know, get better at just estimating that out. But I'd say, you know, most importantly, just always give yourself more time. You know, you always want to make sure that you're not actually copying that bottom line and not able to afford to put food on the table. You know, you've still got to pay yourself. So clients always understand, you know, when you're in this industry, clients understand that development just takes time.
Sorry,
Yes, I absolutely always say no on scope creep. I just say, look, that wasn't in the agreed scope, so we can do a revision on that and it will add more time. I also always bake that into my contracts. I always say there is no allowance outside of the time that has been quoted, and any additional time will create a variance to the contract. So that's, yeah, definitely make sure you bake that into your contracts, otherwise scope creep is something that is always there. Okay, cool.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Alrighty. All right, so we are going to take a break for how long, Greg? How long, Riley?
We don't do
be
out.
We don't do estimates, sorry. Sorry, how long?
How long was the rainfall, Jack?
Yeah, you've got it for a while, to be honest. Like, you know, plenty of time. So if you want,
I guess it's more for the people on the stream probably to know when we're going to be back.
Just need to let the stream know when we're going to be back. So do we want to like
yeah, okay.
break for 20 minutes? And
If you want, you can borrow plates and bring food back in here. It's up to you. If time's an issue.
yeah, no,
20?
take a 20-minute break. And then
20-minute break, everybody. Alrighty, thank you.
There's one vegan and one gluten-free.
An introduction, or are you just good to go?
No one knows me. So yeah.
Just give everyone. I better get in front of the mic so people
Oh,
can
okay.
hear me.
Okay.
Sorry. All right, welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed your pizza and had some more tasty drinks. So next up, hopefully everyone's here. Next up, we have Kevin Bowie talking about some eloquent secret features, I believe. So let's give him a round of applause.
Hi everyone. My name's Kevin, and my talk is going to be about eloquent secret features. A little bit about myself. I started working with Laravel in 2014, quite a bit of time. In my own time, I contribute to the community by answering questions in Stack Overflow and Laracast forum, mostly about eloquent. I also contribute to Laravel documentation, mostly about eloquent as well. It's easy. You just need to think about good examples. That's how I contribute to the community, fast and easy. All right, Anthony, the next slide is for you because you do not work with Laravel. So the next slide will be for you. Okay. So eloquent, like most of us already know, eloquent is a part of the framework that involves interactions to the database, as we all know. We can create, update, delete records in the database. We can create like database queries to get the results that we want. We can create like model classes that represent the database tables and the relationship between those. Basic stuff, just basic stuff. Still, this talk is not about basic stuff. I want to talk about eloquent features that might not be popular. A lot of those are not yet documented in the official documentation. But from my own experience in a lot of common use cases, these features shine. I end up with like clean design, much better design using those features. Today we are going to talk about a few methods, a few properties, some techniques, and as you can see, most of those are not yet documented. We got lots of content. Let's start now. First, we talk about the replicate method. When we replicate a model object, we make a copy out of it, simple. So in this example, I got a book with ID of 1. I copy that book to a second book. Now this copy is going to have all the attributes from the original one, except the ID field and the timestamp field. The created art, updated art, and deleted art, and the ID field of the copy will all be null. And of course, the copy is just an object, so it does not exist in the database. Yeah. The replicate method would be useful to create objects that are nearly identical. And we are looking at the very first example right now. In this example, we are doing some sort of registration. We have customer's controller, and we are kind of like store the customer. So from here, we are creating a shipping address from the form data. And if the form data suggests that the billing address should be the same with the shipping address, probably like a checkbox, we are replicating the shipping address, update the type to be billing, and then save that to the database. Easy. That's the first example. So, second example about replicating, Uber Eats. I eat boring food. I eat boring food. I always order the same food from the same restaurant over and over again. And that reorder button is my favorite feature. So when we reorder an order, it means we replicate that order. And when we think about the actual implementation in Laravel, it's kind of easy. It's like super easy because we got the replicate method. We got the order model. We got the reorder method. And what we are doing right here, we replicate an existing order. And then we replicate like individual items for that order. And then we save the copy items to the copy order, and then just return the copy order. Done. Is everyone clear so far? Yeah, awesome. Second feature, the was recently created property. So the parent abstract model class got the was recently, the public was recently created property. By default, it is false. So how does that work? It's pretty simple. Let's say I get a book object from the database, then of course, was recently created is going to return false. Now I'm going to update that book. Still, it is going to be false. Now I'm going to create like a totally new book. Now this time, was recently created is going to be true. And this is the only time when was recently created property is going to be true. Once again, we talk about an example. I used to work for an online furniture business, and the product team got to update the products from time to time. Yeah, update the product details from time to time. So what we are doing here, the product team is going to upload the CSV file. We read the CSV file. Now for each row in the CSV file, if the SKU already exists, then we update the product. And if not, we are going to create the product. At the end, we want to show the number of products that have been created and the number of products that have been updated. Too easy, because we know this property. I simply count the number of products that was recently created to be true, and otherwise I count those to be false to return the results. And this is the only example. This is the only time I use this property. Can't think of any other example. This is actually a very old feature. I remember seeing this in at most Laravel 5.2. I feel like this is kind of like a good buddy update or create, because when we update or create something, this property is gonna let us know like whether this is a new one or an existing one. Are we clear on that so far? Awesome. The next feature I'm going to talk about is about database queries. We talk about the where key and where key not methods. Back to basics. We find a product with ID of 1. Now what the framework is going to do is that it creates a database query using the where key method and use the ID. Similarly, when we use find and find many and pass like an array of IDs, Laravel is going to use the same where key method to create a database query. In the opposite, we got the where key not, which is like create a database queries that exclude an ID or some IDs. And where key not or where key are still not documented. So from now on, we don't say where ID different to an ID or where not in ID to an array of IDs. In all those cases, we can simply use where key not, which is going to be a bit cleaner. And once again, I got another example showing books from the same order. I got a side project about books, and obviously I need a route to show all the details of one book, like the summary, the author, the release date, and the number of pages, and all of that. And when we look at the very end, at the list at the bottom, I want to show all the books from the same author, in this case J.R.R. Tolkien. But that list should not contain the primary book, should not contain the Fellowship of the Ring. Thinking we get to the implementation now. Basic eloquent stuff. We got a book that belongs to an author. I'm always a big fan of query scope. I create that scope excluding using where key not to exclude a specific book. In the controller action, we got the primary book, and then we got the books by the same author by saying book, author, books relationship, excluding the primary book, and then get the results. And now we got all the other books from the same author without the primary book to display in the bottom list. Yeah. Are we clear on that? Awesome. We move on to the next feature. Take actions quietly. Oh, this one is like super easy. I got the grid. This is a very common use case. When an order, after an order is created, we want to send the order data to an external service to kind of like a data warehouse. And the problem is, you know this, the QA team or the stakeholders always have to test in production. For a lot of features, they always test in production. They are going to create orders in production. Now those orders are actually test orders. So we don't want to send those test orders in production to an external service. In this context, the test order is simply the email is configured in the app. So to do so, we simply make an order out of the request data. And then if the order is a test order, then we just save quietly to ignore the created event. And that way, the test order will not be sent to any external service. Now, who knows save quietly before? Okay, nice. A lot of you, most of you. You might know save quietly, but what about this? So we can create, delete, force delete, update, stop delete, and then restore quietly. We can increment and decrement quietly. We can even replicate quietly. Now those are all edge cases. We don't reach out to this very often. I don't think I ever used replicate quietly in my life, ever. but they're all there. They're all there. Okay, so maybe we all be aware that they're just all there. And that's it. Next one can be interesting. So who know macros? Awesome. You, what is macro?
You're extending the classes on Eloquent to be able to add extra functionality to Eloquent.
Exactly.
I thought I was thinking of something else there for a second.
So that's correct. To me, it's simply the ability to define more functions to the core. In this example, I create a new function named excludes to the collection class, which is kind of like the opposite to contains. And then I check whether an email have the tag of invoice download. Then I download the invoice from the email, and then I tag the email with invoice download. So the next time I see this email again, I'm not gonna do anything with that. This is an actual feature that I worked with before. So yeah, you know that right now we can macro to basically everything in Laravel now. This is just some eloquent example. We can add macros to query builder, to a bunch of relation classes, and to the parent relation class. Yeah. Now we talk about macros with test cases, assertions. The following example is taken from Adam Watan in his DD Laravel course, and then I refactor that to PES to give it kind of like a more modern look. Okay, still, this is kind of like the context. We got a book and a user, and a user is gonna have like a list of books that he wants to read. So we got like a many-to-many relationship between a book and a user, and the pivot table is like a wants-to-read table, something like that. Now we got a test case. first test case. A user wants to read a book. We got an authenticated user. We got two books. The user then wants to read the first book, and then the first book should be in his list, and the second book should not be. And looking at the expectation, I'm using the where key methods again. I checking whether some database queries exist. Now the expectations look okay, but I feel like I can refactor that to something better. And we reach out to macros. We are adding macros to the parent relation class. That assert class from PHP unit is responsible for all sort of assertion. And we are asserting whether the database queries exist. Then we start using macro. This time for assertion, we simply say user list assert contains the first book, and then user wants to read list assert doesn't contain the second book. Yeah, a bit better, like just little improvement, and it looks more linear and better this way. Okay, now quite a few of you know macros, but I need to show macros because with that I'm going to talk about mixins. Okay, who know mixins in Laravel? Who know mixins in Vue.js? So what is mixin in Laravel?
So we're talking about like the like PHP stand kind of like typing a mixin where you are letting all of the, like you're proxying all the calls through from one class to a class underneath it? Is that the type of mixins you're talking about?
No, that one.
I think
I thought you were talking something else, yeah?
I'm talking about mixins in Laravel. But I think that's close.
Like
Yeah.
the forwards calls trait. Is that the kind of mixin we're talking about, or is there another one?
I think there's more than one.
There might be more than one.
Yeah.
Teach me something, please.
Okay, so okay, for people that know mixins in Vue.js, mixins in Laravel is kind of like the same. Now, to me, mixins is probably the most secret feature in Laravel. It was approved in 2017, probably like ages ago, and since then, I think not a lot mentions, just a few mentions. But it's pretty simple. So this time we got an actual class. We got an actual class. And what we are doing right here is that we simply copy the macros from the previous example and then put those in this class. Now, for mixins to work, the functions in mixin should not contain any parameters. The actual implementation are the clauses, which contains the parameters and the actual body. Now before the test case, I'm gonna mix in a new instance of the previous class to the relation class, and everything's gonna work the same. Are we clear on that?
Excellent, I did not know that existed. There you go.
So is that just part of macro walk? So anywhere where you use a macro, you can do that?
Yep, that's right.
Because the other one's like PHP store mixins sort of thing.
Yeah, there's like the forwards calls thing that you can, yeah.
Yeah, so makes sense. Just a bit of thoughts on mixin. I feel like mixins can be helpful if for some reason you use macros extensively in your project, because we don't want to register like 50 macros in a single service provider. Maybe it is a good idea to extract the macros to mixin so we can group relevant macros together. And I see some Laravel package or PHP package that adding a bunch of macros to the Laravel core
yeah, maybe mixins are going to be beneficial for them. Yeah. And last but not least, super simple. We can call the explain method from a database query. So no more dumping the database query and then copy it, paste that into SQL Pro or whatever MySQL client you have, and then put explain word before that query. No, we don't have to do that anymore. Just go explain in Laravel. And a lot more, but that's it. That's it for today. Yeah, thanks. I just closed. Sorry. So just one more. So there are like tons of secret features like this, and we do not know about this until we read the source code. And knowing about those secret features, it's super beneficial. I come up with like a lot of clean and neat design. Laravel code base is kind of like super easy to understand, very easy to understand. So maybe if we regularly read the source code, we maybe spending like 30 minutes reading the source code every day. We know the secret features, we come up with clean and neat design, and then we are able to make the most out of the framework. So yeah, thanks for listening.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry.
I hope that Uber would replicate my existing payments when I replicate my order as well, so I don't have to pay for the new order. That would be amazing.
Yeah, it's really known when you hit reorder and this product is no longer available. And you go to the store and it's right there. It's like, come on, mate.
I was also wondering, what does increment quietly, or just increment and decrement on Eloquent do?
Increment and decrement will run an actual database and save the results to the database. And it just like minus a value, minus or increase a value by 1.
Oh, so you pass in the key you want to increment, like an integer column kind of thing.
By
Gotcha.
default, just one step, but we can specify more than that. Yeah.
Very, very nice.
Yeah.
I still like that where key, especially with like package development, where you don't know what the primary key of the model is going to be. You can just use where key, and then if they're using UUID or anything, so yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Does anyone have any questions? We have a couple of questions coming in here. I think you were first.
I've got 2 questions.
Would you like to come back over here?
Without offense.
And just
summarize
repeat
the
the questions. Yeah, summarize.
Okay.
I think I've used without events before, which is similar to the save Barley or save Barley or whatever. But in terms of documentation, you said it's not documented. I tend to go to the Laravel API documentation. Is that where it's not documented, or
Okay.
just in like the normal like?
We can go to Laravel. Now, save quietly. Certainly documented. Let's say, okay. But restore quietly? Nah, no way. Nah. Replicate quietly? No way.
Yeah.
No.
So I tend to go to the like /API, I think, and then on the URL. No, on the URL. Sorry.
Huh?
/API. I think I don't pick the version number. If you go there.
This one? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have it written. Well,
I think I know where it is.
/8.x.
But that'll be there because it's.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's why
they're
I
all
tend,
on
to,
the
I tend to go there if I'm looking for something.
Okay.
That was good, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question, you probably might not be able to answer this, but Jess might be able to answer it.
jeez.
Is there a risk with using stuff that isn't in the official documentation that it might get deprecated and like if you're building on a bunch of stuff that, because I mean, like Laravel's a really old, like not really old, but it's a relatively old framework, and there is some cruft in there, and occasionally it does get pulled out. Just wondering if there's a risk if you're using this.
yes.
Yeah.
Especially
If it's not documented, yes.
Do you want to summarize the question, or do you want me to answer it? Or?
Oh, okay. Maybe I try first. I
You go
attempt
for it,
first.
yeah.
Okay.
Go.
Yeah. So, that's a good point. I delivered this talk before, and someone else asked me the very same questions. Now, that means that like a complete set of test cases, like a complete test suite, would be super important, because if it passed 100%, then we are fine. I think the upgrade guide, the upgrade guide typically contains those secret features. Yeah. No.
Always. I've had a very bad experience from 7 to 8, I think. There was a bunch of undocumented changes.
Jess is going to promise not to delete any code now. We're all fine.
This is
It's all
when you
good.
document it, so if they break it, go, this is the document, so you can fix it.
Yeah.
This is actually probably why they put the, here's a link to the zips.
Yeah.
Good luck. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks. Thanks.
Any other questions? Steve?
Are there any features that you have thinking about adding to Eloquent, or things that you'd love to see that aren't there yet?
Your questions is like features that you that I think
Yeah.
can be added to Eloquent.
Yeah.
Maybe a good question might be, is there something that you always go to with your macros that you might want to see
In the core.
in the core?
I got an example, but because of the time limit, I can't show that. But there are a few cases, but I can solve with macro. In those cases, I can write macros for that. So I can contribute to the core, but no, I'm good with that. I don't know. Yeah.
How would you go about using Eloquent to do order buy on a relationship?
Order by on a relationship. Okay. Oh, that's a good question. So in a relationship, so there are multiple ways to order by. We can join the tables together, and then order by the column, or we can order by stuff, and then select that column. When ID, let's say item order ID equals order ID, something like that, like order by stuff. So I prefer to join tables together and then order by. But typically, I'm gonna try like different approach and go the explain method. Yeah. Typically, I will order by. I'm gonna try like different ways to order by and go the explain method.
I think Tim also contributed to the core. Tim contributed to the core 2 months ago, adding to raw SQL, which now also includes all the parameters. So you could do something like that and do 2 raw SQL, and Laravel will now give you the prepared query that you can just shove straight into your SQL editor as well.
I think he's getting ready to add one that'll copy it to your clipboard automatically for you as well.
Yeah, I saw his tweet on that, yeah.
And I think that's it.
Any others?
No.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that talk. That was very good. All right. I have nothing else prepared to say. Thank you all for coming. I'm hoping we can hang out here for a little bit longer.
Yeah, probably 7:30 would be the cap.
7:30 is the cap, so the time is currently 10 past 7, so I've got another 20 minutes or so to hang out.
Any ideas on a future meetup?
Yes.
Ask this guy.
Do it in front of the mic. Yeah, I'll do it in front of one. So we are trying to restart this on a sort of regular cadence. So we'll do another one hopefully in 6 months. But if we can find some other sponsors, we'd be able to. I don't know yet. Come and see me afterwards. We also need speakers. So if anyone's got any topics they'd like to, I know some people have some stuff that I've spoken to them about that would make really great talks. So if anyone wants to submit, we've got a GitHub issue page. You can just post a talk if you want something spoken about, but you're too shy to do it yourself. You can also request someone else to talk about something. we'll try and do another one in 6 months, but if we can sort some sponsorship out, we might do it a bit more frequently. And yeah, hopefully Jack will let us continue to use this space because it's pretty awesome. The Storm's giving us a good show out there at the minute, which is great. Everyone's going to turn around. But yeah, thanks for coming, everyone. And yeah, thanks to Jess for standing in and emceeing for us and for our speakers. Kevin's actually come from Melbourne. Kevin? Melbourne? Yeah. So he's on leave. So he's come up for a holiday and decided to come and speak to us. So that's really awesome. But yeah, go and finish the beers and have a chat, and we'll see you all in a little while.